Oh, yeah. The bar, the bar, Jim, the ginger bar, Dajan by Yanda. Zobel and Jerry, one of shots on them on the variation. Jidenja by Jevon, the Vercano, Juba, Lama, Tada, Menam, Jet, and Basan, Jim, then the video. Shaja, two balance, and no shadow, Jazo. Then bar, Jim, then the ginger bar, Dajan by Yanda, on the best. Rewardon, shots on them on the variation, and Jidenja by Jevon. Kalojiva Lana Meba Hada Meno Jet, Sanje Jinde. Benjava Shaja Toba La Chaz and Roger the Jazucha. Dema Jumden, the Jejava Rajuma Yanda Bandu Sanje Riva. Shazon Demba Devarisha Banji Denjam Banjum Lana Meba Hada Meno Jet and Sanje Jumden de Benjam. Shaja Toba La Chaz and Roger the Jazucha. Dema Jumden the Jeju. Rajamba Yanda was over Sanje Riva Shazon Demba Devarisha Banji Denjam. Given the Rakalo Javana Meba Hada Meno Jet and Sanje Jumden. Benjava Shaja Toba La Chaz and Roger the Jazucha. Kanze Ganyan Zowa Jatmasa, Sergeant and Anaji then the La Churches on the Zeke Bajamacha. Nanda Gonga Choto Susan, Yishija, Sergeant on Trouble Jedusum. Gombo Johnny Janacha, and Sension Demba Tremenda, Sendon Rawa Janacha, the Richard, Seba Suma. Yaman Jinjin Janacha, Gombo to Jesha and Jim. Sonomia de Jazoja, the Jensen, giving us one leverage, children and mature, Shinjuju, Turn a travel Lanya, the Lavatala, Rabu, Shingatama, Gedema Yaja, the Bachia, Mejas, Gawa, Rangi Simne, the Nasan Gedema, Kamara Rima, Yamasa, Sugar down, Melon, the Jession. Sonon di Yatam Jesse by Command and Negation. God another Shiva Lord, the civil son under one
Teacher, the blessed one being, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfecting knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, no other, supreme ideal themes to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious comfort, subdue from the Shakya and prostrate in the offering symbol for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfecting knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, no other, supreme ideal beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Shakya and I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one being, full destroyer, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfecting knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, no other world, supreme ideal beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Shakya plane, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When supreme among humans, you are born to serve. You paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies form supremely pure. Wisdom motion like golden mountains. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds. Win of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon. Color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Teacher having all understanding, the field of merit and the qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one who unconcussness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path of sublime pure reality, to the Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and those who show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue and prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, flame of a lamp, illusion, drop of dew or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings attain the level of all seeing, subdue the foe of foes, and be delivered from motion of suffering, negation, sickness, and death.
Sanje Jalo Soje Jalo Chaju Padu Dane Dagi Jesu Jebe Sonam Je Rola Benje Sanje Sanje Jalo Soje Jalo Chaju Padu Dane Dagi Jesu Jebe Sonam Je Rola Benje Sanje Sanje Jalo Soje Jalo Chaju Padu Dagi Jesu Jebe Sonam Je Rola Benje Sanje
I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Dedera Sanje Jumde and the Andina Dijin Wandashuma Yando Bonzo Sanje Ribada Shafon de Devoration. Jinja Majivan de Vakano Jivan Adam Mena Jotuba Sanje Jumde de So. Dijishiwa de Sonam Dabi Jutum Gavezawan Chumis was Rabdo Sonam Jetera Jishi. Bejes Bonam Jendaba Chena Jemeto Jematu Tonam Jimba. Tebeba Namamuro, Sheriff Sijin, Tonam Jevame. Simje Tamji Demba, Chanju Simbanam Jav, Pabia Kazana Javo, Yangene de Bertonja, the Drowan, Tebe, Yishapadam, Boba Simji, so number of them. Yanyamba Widget, Chomij, Gutsumba, the Vata, Suda, Sumevata, the Madeva, Tungena, the Madriva, Pungota, the Madriva, Kanan, the Medivation of the Madeva, Shilvich. Yosun the one that number to the civil to the sure like Yishi Yosu, the Devata Majuba, the Taju. Sanji Jim then the Yishena, never, Yangena, the Yanda, Yatana. Simja Tamjela, Siva, Sada Shuba, dead on the Sanji Jim then the Kuchi, the Yanda. Tabejan, Tomangi, Badu, Tomangi, Teresa, Sindus, whatever you Yanda Batum, Nemba, Tusheva, Yavatum, Deton, Kevano, Sozona, Kevano, Sozarang, Rivachi, Jimnelli, Lavasu, Chundu, Yavachu, Zobe, Chanju, Medimba, Major Devata, the Batamba, Yuva, Tabachi, the Lavachu, Rivachu, Tumbrashu, Tamaja, Charge, Sono, Beijing, Yan Zojawachu, Jabenda Zoju, Kundo, Jabenda Zoju, Chambo. Hangea to Zinja Zuna Dawa, Major Tabation, the bottom down. Chance. Yeah, I think 183 page number. The Precious Guardian 2 says this clearly in the following. Since the person is composed of 6 elements, so and in their translate as element, but in Tibetan it's more like a come to the constituents. So the person is composed of the 6 constituents. It is no absolute existence. So it's just merely designated depending upon the composition of the 6 constituents. The constituents of the the wind element, constituents of the fire element, constituents of the water element, constituents of the earth element, constituents of the space element, the constituents of the consciousness. So is the self or I or person is designated phenomena, which is designated upon the composite of the 6 constituents. So therefore, the person or the self is not absolute existence. And this is like a forest, a singular that exists depending upon the collection of the many trees, or the nations that exist, depending on the many peoples, right? So no absolute existence. And likewise, since each of the elements, each of the constituents is in turn a composite. So each element, like the wind element, the constituents of the wind element is also exists in the base with the collection of the other element, like water and fire, the earth, space, and the consciousness. So they too have no absolute. So each constituent of the elements and the person has no absolute existence. So it just exists through the designations as a designated phenomena. So I think I've mentioned that before, the constituents and the elements, what is the difference? The constituents of the wind element and the wind element. The constituents of the wind element and the fire elements, so constituents of the elements means elements that are particularly right now employing the one individual's, the karmic force, and their emotions. So then that element becomes the constituents of the wind element, constituents of the fire element. Right? Generally, the elements are not, not under the kind of influence of karmic force and the emotions.
That's Jungwa.
Yeah, that's Jungwa. As generally, the air, the space, these are not under the influence of the karmic force and emotions. So if you try to get angry when the wind blows to you, the wind has no feeling at all. So it will just blow it around. So here, in this body, the wind elements, every time it flows is due to the force of your emotional or the karmic force. So that's why the elements in this body called the constituents of the 6th element. So yeah, the point of the first line is to state the reason, because the person is designated in dependence on the collection of the 6 elements or 6 constituents of the elements. The point of the third and the fourth line is to state that since it is impossible for something not to consist of parts, anything that exists, it has to be collectively exist, or it has to exist as a one single entity based with many factors together that consist of the parts. And the barrier of the parts. So the designated phenomena or the designations, rather, the base of the designations, like four aggregates and one person, 4 elements and one person, many trees, a singular forest, right? So how do they really exist? So the composite phenomena and component phenomena,
These are all through the conceptualizations, not through the sensorily, directly, explicitly perceived. These are through the conceptualizations. Collection of the many, constituent parts, the bearer of the parts. Such element is in turn the designated, right? Each element, each constituent of the wind elements is a designated in dependence on the collection of the many constituted parts. The wind in your body is also depending upon the heat in the body, moisture in the body, the solidity in the body, or the space in the body. So the wind in your body is not independently functioning. So to be functions, it is also depending on the heat, the moisture, space, and earth. So there's no such one single element that is independently functioning, right? And how can the person which is designated in dependence on all these elements, how can this person can be independent, right? How can this person can be go independently to life after life, another life, right? So the collection of many constituted parts, therefore, they do not exist on the level of absolute reality or by the virtue of their own sense. So furthermore, if they are designated in dependence on the collection of their constituted parts, neither the parts nor the barrier of parts can be a thing itself. Can be the thing itself. So itself means, so each elements, each constituent elements do not function independently, right, without depending on other elements or the other constituent elements. And so all these, the 6 constituent elements together, and you have designated or imposes the existing of the self of the person. So though each element has no independent function, how can the self, which is designated or imputed, and in the collection of these 6 elements, so the person should not be absolute existence. The person is not independent existence. Person should not have independent activity, right, apart from the collection of the 6 constituents. So therefore, nothing exists by itself. The person is not exist by itself, and each constituent elements, they do not exist by itself. Right. So I think here the Prasangika school, itself, the self, the sound like independent. The selves, I do it myself. So there's some kind of the sound of the independent. So therefore, the persons do not exist in and of itself, by itself, not independent itself, and each elements that the person is depending on also do not have any independent identity, any independent function. So it's a collectively, right? And then the entity, the identifying the single entity or the plural is through the conceptualizations. Right? So kind of altogether, the main point is things do exist as the entity through the conceptualizations. Without conceptualizations, nothing can have identity. So constitutive parts, neither the person nor the bearer of the parts can be itself. Yet something of the different entity from these cannot be the thing either. Something of the different. So like elements in the body, like wind constitutions of the body, right? With this body or within this body, it cannot be exist by itself without depending on the other elements. And also, so if you think, the constituents of wind elements is no different from the space and the moistures, and the heat and the solidity. So does that mean they are one or the same or identical? And says no, they are not identical, right? They are not identical. And then the second step is, if they are not identical, do they exist kind of independently? The constituents of wind element can exist by itself, apart from, or the independent from, or the different from. There's a collection of the elements. Again, says no, it's not identical, nor different. And similarly, the consists of the 6 constituents of the elements as a person, too, not identical with each elements, and the person should not be exist independent from each constituents of the element. So no different, no identical, but it is separate. But there's a separate entity, a separate identity. The person has the separate identity, and each elements in the body has different identity. Therefore, we call 5 or 4 elements. So the 5 or 4 elements means each element has its own identity. So each elements are entity by itself. So the separations are conceptually distincted. Therefore, it appears as a separate, or it counts as a separate, or it conceives as a separate. So therefore, the reality of the separation of the person and the constituent elements, and the reality of each wind element that is separate from the other, the heat and the water elements, as conceptualized. So I think these are very so now insofar as the way vast and so on are conceptually presented. So vast, right? The vast or braid or tree or so whatever any kind of things is conceptually presented. They are in the respect at least exactly similar to the snake imputed on the basis of the rope. So kind of here, this kind of setting the example here, the snake superimposed independent, or superimposed on the coiled rope. Snake is superimposed on the coiled rope. And the self, the person, is imposes or imputed or designated an independence on the collection of the 6 constituents. So now the similar thing is the snakes, the superimposition of the snake is is not findable or not, there's no way you can pinpoint or find within the coil rope, and the same way the person also cannot be found or cannot be found in any illustration of it within the 6 constituents. So, and then why this snake in the coil rope is superimpositional, and why the person's imposes on the collection of the 6 constituents are not superimposed. So the first, from the beginning, it says the person is, right, existing or imposes or designated independence upon. So independence upon the 6 constituents. And when it comes to the snake in the rope, the snake is not exist. It's not really designated phenomena. It is not the entity, but it's out of misconceptions is superimposed on the coil rope. So in the similar way, the tree, a braid. So when you say the braid is the consists of the 8 substance or the 4 substance. So when it comes to 4 substance means color, smell, taste, tactility. So the consist of the 4 substance as a braid is, it is the designated phenomena in dependence upon the collection of the color, smell, taste, tactility. Right. So this is why then you can say, the weight of the braid, kind of tactility, the softness of the braid, and sweetness of the braid, and then the the color of the braid. So the braid seems to be having possessing this color, smell, taste, tactilities. So with your eye, there is no braid that having possessing the color, smell, taste, tactility. With nose, there is no such braid that having possessing the color, smell, taste, tactility. Not for the tongue sensory, right? There is no recognition of any braid that having possessed the color, smell, taste, tactility. So the something, the composite, they consist of the color, smell, taste, tactility as the braid is through the conceptualizations. So, so the vast or the braid is always exists through the conceptualization or conceptually presented or conceptually, identified. Right? So nothing but concept. Right? So now here they're saying, you may think that, oh, how can braid is through the conceptualization? Braid, I can eat, I can touch it. Right? So the braid, if the taste itself is the braid, if the taste itself is the braid, and there's another braid, which is the color, and then another braid, which is the tactilities. Or so then the braid is, if the braid is the taste, and how can that be seen? If the braid is the color, how can that be touched? Right? Every color. So, if the braid is the color, and there's no way you can touch it, you can taste it, you can feel it. If the braid is just the weight, and then how can that be tasted by the tongue? So if that braid is not the color, not the smell, not the taste, not the tactility, but it is the consist of the 4 substance, then that is the conceptualization. Right? So that consists of the four substance or the eight substance is only perceived through the conceptualizations. It's not the property of the I consciousness. So this you can apply to the persons. The persons is existing independent upon the collection of the six constituents, and the person is not the wind constituents, person is not the heat, person is not the moisture, person is not the solidity, the earth element, the person is not the space, person is not the consciousness, not the eye consciousness, not the ear consciousness, nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, the body consciousness, not even for the mental consciousness. But person is existing independent upon these six constituents of the element. Right? And also the person cannot be found independent from the constituent six elements. Apart from the wind, space, the space, wind, water, heat, and then the and the earth element and the consciousness, there is no person that could exist, right, by itself. The person is never exists by itself, apart from the collection of the six constituents. And the person is also not identical or not same with each constituents. So that's really proving that the person is existing through the conceptualizations. The very entity or identity of the person is possessed by thought, is made up to be existing through the power of the conceptualizations, right? So anything that is, presented through the power of the conceptualizations are where they are not findable within their basis is exactly the same as a snake unfindable within the rope. So that is the kind of, I think that is the point the Prasangika schools, nothing inherently exists, nothing intrinsically exists, nothing exists through the characterizations, and nothing truly exists, nothing is absolute, nothing ultimately exists. So Prasangikas, in the Prasangika school, they are all same, truly exist, ultimately exist, and absolute exist, inherently exist, or intrinsically exist, are all same meaning. So, which again and again in the Prasangika schools. So this is why dependent, relatively exist, right? Like, east and west. Say east exists because of the west, west exists because of the east, right? And south exists because of the north. If there's no north, there's nothing to be, known as a north. And then right and left. So without existing on the right, there's no left. Without left, and then there's a concept of that side and this side, right? It's just relatively, right? So relatively exists. So that side and this side is not independent. So when that mountain, so that that directions is because of that directions is because of the soil or the because of the locations identify themselves. If you go to that place, and you should call it that side, I'm standing, right? So you always says I'm standing on this side. So when you sit here, When you are when you are standing here, and you call it again that side. So if you go there, and this is becoming that side, right? So, and tall and short, right? And then favorable, unfavorables. These are all played by the conceptualizations, right? So nothing but conceptual. So that conceptually, kind of, conceptually, presented the many, presented the entity by imposing one by depending on others, right? So presented one because of the something else. So the things do exist relatively. So the relativity exists dependently is exist. So so therefore, its Prasangic school is not calling that things do not exist at all. The Prasangic schools, things do exist relatively, dependently. Right? So no absolute, no truly exists. No intrinsically exists, nothing inherent. So between the vast and so on, the one, so on the one hand, and the rope snake on others. On the one hand, the rope snake is on the other. The two cases are entirely different when it comes to whether they exist, whether they are capable of effective functions, and so on. So this is because there is a clear distinctions between the two, whether their conventions remain essential for everyday transactions, right? And whether the usage of such convention is susceptible, to invalidations. So that's the snake and the rope, and then the braid as it consists of the 8 substance or the 4 substance. The person exists. Person exists, and depending on the 6 constituents. So the way they are not findable, or no, where they do not exist inherent within the basis, right, is exactly the same, but one you should think the snake and the rope are non-existing, person is reality.
Just to clarify, how do you describe function relative to snake and rope, for example? How do you describe function relative to snake and rope? It says here that two cases are entirely different when it comes to whether they exist, whether they are capable of effective functions, and so on. So I'm trying to get some clarification again of how function applies in this context.
So so your question is, so here in the text is comparing two things: the person and the snake in the coil rope. Person with the aggregates, snake in coil rope. So snake in the coil rope is we call non-existing, right? Now the question is, if you think that a snake in the coil rope is non-existing because there is no snake within the rope or the color of the rope, this is the only reason you think that therefore the snake in the coil rope is non-exist. And the similar you can apply, and then person should not be non-exist because the persons cannot be found from the body, from the emotional, from the feeling, and a person also not exists within the wind element, space element, moistures, and the earth element. So then becomes the snake in the coil rope is non-existent, not because of it does not exist from the rope, right? So the snake is proven to be, the snake in the coil rope is proven to be non-existing by the conventional. So now we have to bring them to the, local judge first. So debate has to be, so local judge, conventional, like common sense, People say common sense, right? So the conventional. So why the conventionally saying there is no snake? The snake rope, the snake in the rope or coil rope is out of your misconceptions. So this is the conventionally saying snake in the coil rope is out of your misconceptions. Now, in the conventionally, we don't say the person with the body is out of misconceptions. The person in his, person with emotional is not non-existing. So the conventionally thinks that the snake in coil rope is non-existing, and the person in the aggregates, person with breathing, person in the motions, the blood, right, is we call, if someone fainted and the doctor check, if the blood flows to the body, so he maybe get up, so he might get up in 10 minutes, right? So the person is existing, right? Person is existing. Now, does that mean the doctor believes his blood is him? No, right? So not because of they're referring the blood that flows in the body is the person. So that is the conventionally. And then conventionally, snake in the coil rope is refuted as existence. The person in the heat, person in the with the heat and the wind and the moistures and the body and the feeling and the discrimination awareness and the eye consciousness, nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, never refuted by the conventional. And also, so then the second kind of, levels, we say, how about the ultimate kind of, so objectively, right? When it comes to the objectively kind of, search for the kind of, the, how's that? Like snake in the coil ropes, even if you've when objectively searched, snake in the coil rope is not findable. So objectively, when negate the snake exists from the coil rope is also kind of indicates that not only in the basis, even in the conventionally. Like for example, finding no I in the body and then finding I with the body, right? You can recognize the person with the body At the same time, person never found within the body. Within the body, body has never identified as a person. See, each element is never identified as a person. And your feelings and your perceptions are never identified as a person. But the person always exists with the each aggregates. So this is kind of it's very it's not easy to make really kind of clear judgment. So the why is the snake in the corridor is non-exist. Why the person with aggregates, the person with wind elements, person with space elements, why it's not non-existence. So the conventionally and so ultimately, when you're refuting the snake in the coil rope, and that also refuting the objectively and the conventionally.
I'm still having some, I'm not having difficulty with what you're saying now. But that's not, doesn't seem
Can you a little bit closer to the speaker?
Oh, I'm sorry. My hand was probably covering the speaker. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So this term function is what's bothering me because, I mean, this whole thing is talking about how things exist. Do they exist as we perceive them? Or do they not exist how they perceive them? But into this conversation, they've brought the term function. So now I have to say, how are they using this term function? Are they using the term function, for example, in how do things function? What is the cause of mistaken perception? Even conventionally, like, for example, we can mistake a coiled rope for a snake, and the coiled rope and snake function differently because snake has some kind of energy that causes it to move, whereas the rope has no energy, it just remains coiled. It doesn't. So I'm trying to, I'm when I hear the term function, I'm trying to apply it somehow to misperception, how we mistake things, how we mistake, for example, a coiled rope from a snake. How can we tell the two apart? But I'm not really sure that is how the term function is being used here. See, I don't know if I'm articulating this well.
Are they capable of effective functions? You're talking about that, right? Capable of effective functions. The effective function of the snake, right? So is there effective function of the snake with the snake in the coil rope? So effective function of the persons, right? The persons with the body, with each elements. So now this is kind of, the main determinations is always done by, right, conventional. So what conventional says, so what common sense could make determinations on that. So is there any effective function of the snake with the snake in the coil rope? And the conventionalist says no. This cannot be bite you. The snake in the coil rope cannot be poison you, right? But it's scary as there's the fear because your mind is superimposing that the coil rope is a snake. But you don't have to worry it has some kind of activity or biting or the poisoning you. Right. So now the question is the way this kind of, the snake and the function of the snake is unfindable within the coil rope, the same you can apply. The person is also unfindable within his body, within the feeling, within the discriminations, within the space, within the wind element, within the water, right? And then the earth element. It's almost like your 4 or 5 aggregates, like the coil rope. You are seeing the persons within them, right? So you are seeing the person. You always see yourself as a person that exists with the body. And you also sometimes see yourself, right, with your thought. So sometimes I'm very intelligent, I'm very smart, I'm knowledgeable. So you find yourself in the wisdom or the intellect, in the intelligence. And sometimes people find themselves in their how say the aggregates. Oh, I'm beautiful, I'm not beautiful, right? So the people always find the self of the person in the body, in the feeling, in the discrimination awareness, and even sometimes the doctor finds the person in can nerve, right? Is he there? Is he not? So when he check on the nerve, if there's a proper function, the blood flows in the body, the doctor says he just fainted, he's still there, he's alive. So what does that mean? Are these not like exactly the same in the imposing the snake in the coil room? Because none of those has any function of the person. None of those are never identified or never recognized as a person. Why people keep seeing the self of the person, I, in body, in wind, in the emotions, and the heat? So this is really kind of big questions. So now the question is, the snake in the coil rope is non-existing if you say, oh, because the snake do not exist from the side of the coil rope. If that is the only reason you have to disapprove the snake in the coil rope, and the same you can reject the person with the body, because there is no person, right, within the body, because from the body there's nothing you can identify as the person, not from the skin, not from the flesh, not from the bone, not from the kind of the blood, not from the heat. So nothing can be illustrated as a person. So why do you think that person with the body is existing, its thing in a coil rope is non-existing? So, and then this is like, conventional, our kind of, arguments and bring it to the judge. So because there's two sides of the people saying the argument is just almost equal. So then the third person has to come, says, so one is the wrong one, and he has this kind of, what do you call that? The judge, huh?
The gavel.
Gavel, the hit on the table, then said that is the final decision. So that is the common sense that says, oh, the snake in the coil rope is non-exist. If the snake in the coil rope exists, and your face should exist in the mirror, right? So in that case, the person with the body is existing because by depending upon the body that defines the person is doing something. from the speech of the person is also defines he is speaking. And he did that, right? He has done something. Therefore, he is in the he is in the experiencing the result of that, consequences of that. So the actions defines the persons, and body defines the person, feeling defines the person. So when something defines the person, that reference should not be, or reference not necessary to be, the referral object. So if each reference and their referral are identical, so if you want to go to Los Angeles, just look at the boat. That's enough. You don't have to go to Los Angeles. So 10 is Los Angeles. So just look up the boat and then just come back home. So I went to the Los Angeles, right? So the reference and the referral. So this can be referral the person to doing something. So that the judgment now, the judge says, so I find the snake in the cauldron is nonsense. I find the person with the body, person with wind, person with heat, person with earth elements, a person with kind of speech, person with eye consciousness is making sense to me. So I will say this is the reality and others non-reality. Right? So there's a conventional. So conventional reality is conventional reality is is made up to be existing with some factors. So there is not deep kind of there is no really kind of characteristics that really identifying by themselves. So the Prasangic school, nothing exists from their own essence. Nothing exists by their own essence. Nothing exists in and of itself, means object never identify anything by themselves. So you see, like, the meaning from the words, again. So Buddha says throat, and what is that? Palates, and the kind of the movement of your tongue, and then this kind of the air from your throat, yeah, and then there says oh, right? They say something, the speech from the letters, so that the meaning from that his letters or his words are not in each letters. The meaning of the words are not in the tongue, not in the throat, not in the palate. So meaning from the letters of the sentence is with thought, there is some kind of meaning in the words. Without thought, it's just like a sound of the crow, so, or the dog, or this, there's nothing, right? So you say, oh, he say, aha, and he understands something. So this I have to impose. Right? So that there is no such meaning by itself, even in the words. So there is no persons by itself that identify kind of, from the body itself. There is no person that identified by itself or inherent within the body of the feeling or the tactilities or the consciousness of the the space element or wind elements. So the person is totally absent and totally divided from the aggregates. Something totally absent, but using them as a reference, it is referring something. So that again, because of your conceptualization. So the conventional reality is just, it's just very fragile conventional realities. So you cannot ask too many questions, or you cannot really tease them. So they will kind of disappear, shy away. So it's it's mathematicals. 2 plus 2, there's a 4. This is you assumed. Right? Number 1, the kind of singular or the plurals. These are all has to be made up by the conceptualizations. So a forest as a singular. So with what evidence, or with what kind of base you are deciding a forest as a singular? So when you go to the forest, you see many. And what makes you think a forest as a singular? So are nations, you say singular again. So what is the basis for that? So the nation is existing in dependence upon the collection of the many people. A mala, a garden, right? So, and then the countries, right? A government, their government, their governments. There's government. Within the one country, the government sometimes belongs to the democratic government, sometimes the republican government. So who is just kind of who's what is that government that goes to the other side and it comes back in different parties? So these are through conceptualizations. It is just appears or existing, kind of functioning through the conceptualizations. That is the reality. Beyond the concept, there is no reality of the government, or there is no reality of the nations, there is no reality of a forest, a garden, whatever you say. There's nothing. With conceptualizations, many things can exist. Many things can be used as a reference to refer something else. So the point is, here the Prasangra school says, everything kind of, what makes things existing and things comparable is when there is a concept and that things can exist and you can compare them. So without concept, without conceptualizations, and nothing seems to be identified, nothing seems to be entity. There is no identity, there is no singular or the plural, or there's no kind of favorable, unfavorable. So which means only within the conceptualizations things do exist, all right? Without the force of the conceptualizations, nothing could identify, nothing could exist. So each conventional reality is like a bubble, like existing. If you go closer, if you touch the finger, it pops, it disappears. So that's how our reality, these bubbles, from the collection of these bubbles, we make the individual's life. And from the many bubbles, we make the human realms. So another bubbles, the animal realms, the God realms. So the different realms is through the projection, through the conceptualizations. And individual life is also through the conceptualizations.
Is that another way of saying that our references, our conceptual references, are very fragile and very arbitrary? and that they can be very quick to change in how they perceive something. That the solidity is imposed because we believe in it, things inherently exist. But as soon as we see that things exist by virtue of designation, that designation itself is an arbitrary process in terms of how we want to assign meaning. There's so many ways to assign meaning. There's so many ways to assign what the country is. Some people don't accept the country is a two-party system. You're not American unless you're white, or you're not American unless you're Trump or Republican, or you're a Democrat pluralist. That all these things are very kind of, they seem so solid.
Yeah.
And we operate with this illusion of solidity, but in fact, the process of designation is like a bubble. It's very arbitrary.
The references themselves are very fragile. They are not reliable. Because the best reference, should be existing, the air that we breathe in and out, and the heat that is in the body. Therefore, the blood flows in the body, and we can sense things, we can taste things, we can feel things, we can see things. So that making us existing. So each reference to those elements, they already decided from the beginning, right? They disappears in the space. So none of those references, we can say, I will worship you, I rely on you, please keep me existing. They say, no. So, we're designed to pass. So they're just born to be dying. Or it's always, like, for example, even the wind element, breathe in and out. The breathings, sometimes through the meditations, there's a certain the concentration of the meditations, they can stop breathing, right? So there's some kind of training. So while there's no breathing, but the body never dissolve. It's never decay. So I think even that time, there's no breathing that can lift your chest up and down, but the steady wind is still there. Right? So it's really you cannot say, this is the one that making me exist. Right? So you cannot, selectively, say, this is the one of the most thing that make me existing, or wind, or the heat, or the bloods, like the motions and the solidities. So this just with these conceptualizations, and constantly me existing, and then always with different characteristics. And sometimes with the body, I'm existing, I feel more active, exciting. So physically some kind of, the energized, or physically some kind of, the appearance good, or some excitements. And sometimes the mind, or you can see the I, or the self, or the person is changing constantly, right? With your with your thought. When your thought changes too fast, again, you see yourself is just improving or decreasing very fast. And sometimes you can see yourself existing with, your positions. Right? If you have good horse, that's very beautiful. And that also make you existing. That's my horse. You see, So if everybody, the neighbor, even see this, oh, Tenzi Sherpa's horse is going, so I'm existing with that horse. Or you have a good table, or you have good hair. So there's no one thing, single thing. So you can just rely on. So it's, seeing yourself changing, seeing yourself and the kind of the exciting or the disappointing is through conceptualizations. You just keep imposing many characteristics within there, and some of the characteristics become more vivid and more convincing to you, and that makes you disappoint, that makes you excite. And that characteristic is you just imposes. So without any reason, sometimes you can feel very kind of, low. Without any reason, sometimes you can be very excited. Right? So what is that object? What were you looking at? What you observing that makes you excited and disappointed? So the focal objects always through the conceptualizations. That's why every day we are living in their conceptualizations. So there is no absolute, or there is no one single reference, right? And there is no the self or the entity of the self or the person that is intrinsically exist, right? Within the aggregates or apart from the aggregates. I think, then what is that? How do you see yourself happy? How do you see yourself? Because the characteristics projected by the thought are not reliable, right? They are not really sustainable. They do not exist. They do not have any solidity, the objectivities. So why do you think that following the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha has shown some path that can exactly or definitely lead to the liberations, more peaceful happiness? So the Buddha has shown the path to recognize those bubbles or those projections. So by simply recognizing so convincingly, and you see all these meta projections only exist through the force of the conceptualizations. They do not have their essence from their own side. So just simply recognizing them is the actual path to, right, not being deceived by any mental projections. If you're not deceived and not lied by any misconceptions or the emotions, and you are a very reliable experience. So the liberations means no longer mental projection can deceive you or lie to you. You cannot deceived and you cannot cheat by those mental projections. So you got a freedom. That freedom is forever. So in the ordinary world, constantly deceived and lied by the mental projections. Mental projections mental projections, some are borrowed mental projections. Society, this information, and you just add it on to your own mental projections. And that, so you're already you're already overpowered by your own projections, and you bring another informations and editing on those mental projections, and that again, so almost like there is no kind of place that you can escape. right? Even you just go to the top of the mountain, there's no people at all, but still your projections are there. So this can be, so you have to make sure the mental projections, they don't have any essence by themselves. So that is the way to kind of, liberations of our setting free, set free of the mind, mental consciousness. So, yeah. And also kind of, being constantly alive by the mental projections is also a very, sometimes it's very useful for the, the corporators, so they can sell many toys or any kind of things, the products, any commercial, it works with you. There are things that are not kind of, the things that cannot be useful to you, but they can convince it can be meaningful to you. And the politicians and the religions, is now you have become the field to, manipulations. So anyway, that's kind of, mental projections are not truly exist. They can't, that is a deceptive kind of, so mental projections and the mind that projects are always the deceptive phenomena. Being trapped in this deceived is the samsara, or cyclic existence.
So in a way, you're saying we cannot escape having mental projections, but we can learn to not take them seriously as being authentic representations of how things
so
are.
More serious, more trapped. So there's the story, right? I told you before, there's the story in the sutra that says the one ordinary person, ordinary man, in his dream. So, and in his dream, he has a secret relation with queen. And then in the dream, the king sense that he has a secret relations, and king sends the army to now he's running away from the army. So more he is serious, there's more suffering. So because the army become more vivid and they're chasing him. So the only way to stop that, the lie is to be awakened, or knowing this is just dream. That can help. Awakened mind can help. Not serious mind. Serious mind can be serious is not very useful much. So because no object, no minds are serious. So projections have no seriousness. Projectors have no seriousness. They can just, anytime they can project. So why you are so serious? So just being kind of, awakened, or being aware of what you are seeing, what you are imagining, and so how things, how you, imagine, or the characteristics, how they are more kind of, is overpowering on you. So if you understand that, and you can set free yourself from the suffering. So suffering is nothing but that trapped in the mental projections. So that's what we call Buddhas awakened ones. So now you cannot sell anything to Buddha. So, no iPhone, no computer, no any Apple products. Buddha says, I don't need it. Even use the iPhone Pro. How about Pro? Pro. Buddha says, Pro or no Pro. Yeah, so no politician can turn Buddha in Republican or Democratic. So yeah, that's the susceptible to the invalidations. That everyday transactions remain, the everyday transactions remain tenable in this world, presented through the conceptualizations. How's that? Conceptualizations represent, yeah, among the commentators of the words and meaning of the Madhyamika treatises are unique traditions of the interpreting the noble Anagarjuna and his son by the three masters, Buddha Palitas, Shantidevas, and the Master Chandrakirti. This issue of how everyday translations remain possible in the world presented through the conception is indeed the most difficult point of the final view of the middle way. So that is the very, most difficult part to those mental projections without any bringing any damage to the projections, knowing exactly as they are. So that is the most difficult part. So sometimes when we negate something, right? When we negate something and we are annihilating the conventional reality. So without annihilating conventional reality and proving them are not truly exist, that is the most difficult part, right? So I think I said Gemekolo. So as I mentioned, the will of the fire of the incense, right? The Gemekolo, the one single incense, and you just turn it away in the speed. So you can, there's the appearance of the will of the fire. So the appearance, you have to accept this is the real. At the same time, as it appears, there is no will of the fire from one single incense. That also you should understand that. So if you do that, turn it very fast, of course, by nature, it appears to you as the will. But as it appears to you as the will, there is no will at all from one single incense. So try to find, not damaging that appearance and proving them are lying. So like it's one person and so many years they're lying to you and you never know he's lying. Now you understand. And also you can keep him as a good friend, right? so he will keep entertain you, right? At the same time, you cannot be deceived by him. So that is the kind of best solution to find the peace, right? So that's also one of the skills. Keep lying is also. Without intelligence, you cannot do that. So the conventional reality is like that. It's always lying to you. Now you understand he is lying, right? The moment that you understand every speech is kind of, not true, and at the same time, you have no hatreds, you have no you are not abandoning that the speech, right? So sometimes it's good to listen, right? So how this person's kind of collecting the information, where he's collecting the information. So what knowledge the base of he was lying to you. So those bases are sometimes very useful for you to enhance your knowledge. Right? So be friendly with conventional reality, knowing there are unreal. So that is the kind of the most difficult part. So understood thus, then as the precious guardian states, nothing whatsoever, not even the mere name, exists on the ultimate level, and on the conventional level too, nothing exists other than what are presented as the mere designations through the conventions such as name. So when I read this in English, this is not good. So this is like, for example, saying, actually, so here they're saying, the main here, one saying is the things do exist through the through the conceptualizations, right? Things are existing, or things are possessed to be existing through the conceptualizations. So kind of without conceptualization, or without depending on conceptualizations, nothing really exists, even in the conventional reality. Right? Coil, snake in a coil rope, and a person with aggregates, both cannot exist or without being presented by the conceptualizations. Right? Not only the snake in a coil rope, even the person with aggregates, person with feeling, person with thought, also not exist if that is not presented by the conceptualizations. Right? So without projector, without the being projected by the thought, snake in a coil rope, person and aggregates, both are equally not exist. So which means with conceptualizations, and there is a person with aggregates as a conventionally exist, and there's a something as a snake in a coil rope as not exist conventionally. So exist and exist non-existing because of the conceptualizations. Right? So when I read this in English line, I don't understand what it's saying, so I have to. Yeah, the precious gun, nothing whatsoever, not even the mere name, exists on the ultimate level. On the convention level too, nothing exists other than what are presented as mere designations through the conventions such as name. So the precious garland says, because the material things are mere name, space too is mere name. How can there be matter with no elements? Therefore, mere name too do not exist. Feeling, discriminations, mental formations, and the consciousness. Contemplate this just like the element or the self. Therefore, the 6 elements have no selfhood. So this line, because the material things are mere name, the space too is mere name. And how can there be the matters with no elements? This particular line is kind of is mentioned in the whole chapter 4, Nagarjuna chapter 4. So elements and so the question is, how do you really experience the 4 elements? Because we believe the 4 elements. There is a wind element and a fire element, water element, and earth element. So through what sensual experience that you can feel or you can understand. So there is the air, there is the heat, there is the water, there is the earth. So why do you ask these questions? Because the color, smell, taste, the tactilities, this is what you can sense through the sense power, right? And the color exists, but it is not the wind, not the air, not the wind, not the water, not the heat, and not the earth element. And the taste, tactility, sound, all of them. So these are the kind of, directly perceived by the sensory perceptions. So these are not element. So other than these 5 sense powers, other than the 5 sense powers, which gateway or which way you experience that makes you believe the 4 elements exist? Right. So here it's not making sense if you say, oh, because my grandfather says, my teacher says 4 elements, therefore I believe there's a 4 elements. So can you experience, can you understand the 4 elements exist through the sensory perceptions? Or you think the 4 elements exist because of the imaginations? So are you realizing the 4 elements through the imaginations, or are you understanding or realizing the 4 elements through the sensory perceptions? So what sensorily experience is the color, smell, taste, the tactility, and the sound. So you have to then say the color is the water, or it is the wind, or it is the, so 4 elements are tactility. So 4 elements are tactility. So then they're saying there is a 4 element. When you experience the 4 element, what you have got, right, while you are kind of looking for the elements, so what you got through the sensory perceptions, I got the color, smell, taste, tactilities. other than that, so apart from that, there is no element that I experience. So now that means the color, smell, taste, technologies are not apart from the four elements. Right? Not apart from the four elements, which means the color, smell, taste are not existing without the four elements. They are not apart from the four elements. They are not different from the four elements.
I'm sorry. I'm a little confused. I thought we were talking 6 elements before.
Yeah, before.
Why are we saying 4 elements? I'm
That's
confused.
before. So like 3:12 p.m. So we are talking about the 6 elements. Now we are talking about 4:42. So now we are talking about the elements and the matters. Before we talk about 6 constituents, right? The wind and the heat and water, and then the earth elements and the space and the consciousness, 6 constituents. So now here they're saying the color, smell, taste, technology, and the wind, fire, water, earth. So the question is, do you see the difference? The color, smell, taste, technologies, that's different from the 4 elements. So some may think that color, smell, taste are different from the 4 elements. And one reason, because these are the product of the 4 elements. So if other than that, color, smell, taste, technologies, other than that, any sense power that through that you can sense the 4 elements. And we say no. So, and what you sense through the sense power are are necessarily to be elements. If you say yes, then what is the color? What is the smell? What is the taste? What is the technology? So which part of elements, the color that you see? Which part of elements that is the smell that you can smell through the nose? So this is like for you buy the vegetable from the supermarket, and then you cook in a separate pot. So one person to cook in this pot, another pot. So at the end, so when you eat, so you say, oh, maybe your cook is more delicious than me. Or others says, oh, yours is more more delicious or less soiled, salt. Or some may say, oh, this is more sweet, this is less delicious. So the vegetable is coming from this one source. When you cook, and you have different tastes. So the 4 elements is universal, including insects and elements. So they all use that as source to experience this smell, taste, and technologies and the colors. So we as a human being, we also use the same source. And then, so this is kind of what we call your own portions as a human being, that you can see the colors, smell, taste, technologies. So, which means the way the human being experience the color, smell, taste, technologies is not experienced by the cow or horse and even the God. When the God experiences the smell, taste, technologies, is not experienced by the human being. So
Sound. You're leaving out sound, right?
Huh?
Color, smell, taste, tactility, and sound.
Yeah.
Sound.
Yeah, I missed that sound. So I'm keep making that sound is also included. So color, smell, yeah, taste, tactility, and the sounds. So it's saying that the four elements are actually is not a color, not a smell. The four elements are tactility, is the object or the private object or private property of the kind of body sense power. So when my eye and looking into the elements, what I see through my eye is the colors. So the all are engaging in the four elements with eye, four elements as a color, with nose, four elements as a smell, with tongue, four elements as a taste. So this means they're using the same source and from the different door of the sense power, and you experience separately. Right? So yeah, I think the main point is what you sense through the sensual experience, sensory experience are no different from the, how to say, the great four elements. So great four elements are no different from what you sense through the sensual perceptions. And the sensual perception that you experience are no different from the four elements. So, so every sentient beings just kind of experiencing the great four elements equally, but so each human being have different way of experiencing it. Animals and god realms, that they're different. So it's saying that because of we say human being is the collection of the six constituents. So which means when in my body is activated or move due to the force of my own karma, my own emotions. And this wind in this my body has, the special quality or the unique quality or the qualities is not shared with the other. So with that, and I have the taste is different. My smell is different. But all of them, so this is, so and some says that the ball of the water, and that touches the human tongue, we say it's just normal water. And then this ball of the very ball of the water, and that taste or touched by the hungry ghost, and they say it's very unattractive substance. And that very bowl is tasted by the god, and this is nectar. So the source is the one kind of ball of the water. But because of your karma, because of your body structures, and has different tastes, different, right? So this is the matter with no elements. How can there be a matter with no elements? Means the elements are source, but each of the sensual the experience, sensual object, their existing is always with four elements. Without four elements, impossible. And now, so the second opinions is if the sensual objects are as the product of the four elements. So does that mean the four elements, once being produced, right? Once being produced, and is no longer depending on their source. Like when the sprout manifests, is no longer depending on its seed. Seed is ceased to exist. So again, if this is the kind of questions, this taste, the smell, that once they're being produced, once they arisen, and is it no longer relying on the four elements? It says no. Without existing of the part elements, the four elements, there is no smell, there is no taste, there's no tactility. And at the same time, now the Prasangya philosophical thinking, the taste, smell, tactilities, once it arises, again, there is no four elements, it's producing it because it's already a product. And before kind of they being produced, prior to that, there is no elements that is producing it. So again, they're going back to the Nagarjuna's, the praises to the Buddha Shakyamuni, right? No arising, no disintegrations. So this something arising and erasing and disintegration and the cessations, again, is made up by the conceptualizations, right? Yeah. Yeah. Too much to think, too much to say. Any questions?
Yes, I actually did have one. So from the Chandrakirti school, the pebble is transformed by the magician, and so the Chandrakirti says it's 50-50. And the Prasangika says that the coiled rope is turned into a snake through misconception. I guess my confusion is that what is the difference between the rope and the pebble? Because in both analogies, it seems like there's a basis,
yeah.
But it sounds like the Satchantika is saying that the result of the illusion is real.
Mm-hmm.
But the Prasangika says that it never was real. So, and that's where I'm confused, or if I'm understanding it.
I think this is the questions, if you question raised to the Savatantrika middle way. So Savatantrika middle ways, it says snake in coil rope is the snake, appearance of the snake from the coil rope is not the product of the coil rope. It's just because of your fear or your misconception. So you just kind of instantly superimposing on the coil rope or the patterns of the color or the way it's coiled up. So maybe that, and then you may have some kind of fear. So if there, maybe you have experienced before, the snake comes in your house, right? So that really projecting that. So the Savatanic middle way says the snake and the appearance of the snake in the coil rope is not the product of the coil rope. Now, the kind of horses and the elephant, the appearing of the horse and the elephant with pebbles, that is the kind of pebbles that is with mantra, right? Pebbles with mantra or any trick, right? So these are the pebble and the mantra are the cause to give you the appearance of the horses and the elephant. So this is the cause. The coil rope is not the cause, right? So with light or without light, it will produce the appearance of the horses and the elephant. The coil rope, if you put the light on it or flashlight, so immediately you see it's just a rope, all being closer to it. So the coil snake and the coil rope is out of your fear or your suspicions or your experience in the past is superimposing, projecting on the coil rope. So it's not the product that produced by the coil rope. It is rather from your own experience or your misconception. But the pebble has already kind of, it already changes by the mantra and the certain rituals. So these are the very cause to give you the kind of appearance of the horses and the elephant. So the medieval, South Tantric middle way, so that's a 50-50. And the way that appearing the horses and the elephant not being true, right? As it appears the elephant, there is no elephant, there are horses. And the very appearance is the product. As it appears, it's not true, is their reality. So the horses, the elephant appearing is not through the projections, right? So appearance is not through the projections. The appearance as the real horses, the horses and elephants is the superimposition, is the projection. So that's the kind of question, an answer from the Savatantrika middle way. The Prasangika school says, so the kind of the horses and the elephants, nothing really exists from the pebbles and the sticks, and even from the mantras. And exactly the same, the snake that do not exist from the coil rope is the same. So if you say, oh, the pebbles and the sticks are kind of, what do you call it? Has some kind of, also through the mantra, they maybe empowered. So when the mantra used to the pebble, conjure, okay, yeah. Okay. So conjure, through the reciting the mantras and the certain rituals, they conjure the pebbles to the horses, the elephant, right? So the Prasangika school says, from the cause, there is no horses, no elephant at all. So the appearance, and the Prasangika school says, appearance of the horses, the elephants, we also believe that is the reality. That is the conventional reality. So the medieval Savatantrika says that is the intrinsic. Prasangika says it's not intrinsic, but it's the reality. So reality means reality. There remain reality as ordinary perceptions, a reality for reality for the ultimate perceptions, reality for the conventional perceptions. The two. This reality, the appearance of the horses and the elephant from the pebbles in the stick, right? is the product, is conventional reality. This is like, water like appearance from the mirage is the reality, right? Water like in the mirage, water like in the mirage is the reality, but that appearance is not intrinsic, right? The mirage can be caused by this heat, this kind of the strong heat from the sun, and that hits on the sand, right? Some sand there. So it produced the mirage. So that mirage, water like mirage do not exist, right? From the sand, from the heat. But appearance is undeniably its reality. So the Prasangika school, that's why the Prasangika said, this is the most difficult part. Accepting the conventional reality and knowing that it not truly exists as it appears. So that's most difficult, because when you prove that it's the unreal or not truly exists as it appears, and you think we are annihilating of that appearance. Prasangika schools, without damaging on appearance and knowing that it not truly exist. So medieval South Tantrika school believes that appearance of the horse and the elephant from the mantra. So this is the product of this magician's recitation of the mantra, magicians, using the mantra on the pebble on the stick. So the medieval South Tantrika thinks that these are the cosmic conditions. Anything that born from the cosmic conditions, as the 50% is already reality from the object side. Anything that born from the cosmic conditions, so 50% it's real from the object side. It's a product. Like a sprout from the seed is already kind of intrinsic nature. It is the it is intrinsic nature. Sprout from the seed, yogurt from the milk, are intrinsic natures. So cause and effect is the cause and effect are cause and effect that exists by the essence of the cause and effect themselves, is not mental projections. So medieval South Tantrika thinks that. So the Prasangika school says, even the concept of the cause, concept of the effect, is 100% mental projections. The relation of the cause and effect, 100% mental projections. Arising from the cause, effect arising from the cause is 100% mental projections. So how there is mental projections? So when you see the arising, something arises from the cause. So when the time you are kind of imagining or seeing this may come from that, right? This may come from that, coming from the arising from that means what is the kind of exact focal object of that? So there always is arising is future. You are seeing in the future there's the activity of arising from the cause. You don't see it. This arises from the seed based with anything that is already arisen. So something that is already came in the shape and the design being produced. There is, with your eye, you don't see it is coming from it. So the arising is exactly you're looking into the future. So the future kind of appearing, the activity of arising from the cause is kind of, it totally is not real. The future of the sprout is not a sprout. When you see the arising, so it arising as a sprout. If the future seems to be coming, so the coming as effect is totally non-existing, but it appears. If the future comes as effect, so which means future itself is the present, it's no longer future because it's already produced. If the future is unborn, and why it has the activity of coming, activity of arising. So the Prasangic school says, very concept of arising and giving rise to the effect are 100% mere name and mere projections. So yeah, Savatandika midway is more kind of, they are not really going really deep, objectively looking into. They just, what do you call it, skimming on the shallow. so they try to understand emptiness, right? At the top of the water. The real jewels underneath. So
Okay, I have some questions for you. These are kind of fun. That's for me a very fun area of inquiry. And I think I'll begin with just kind of an introduction before I kind of get to the point. Of course, there's these accounts of ancient debates. They weren't exactly debates. They were really displays of mastery of illusion. That's what they were. They were competitions over the mastery of illusion between great Vedic masters and great Buddhist masters. I won't use the word Hindu because that's a British term, so I use the term Vedic. And so they would have these disciples would gather with their gurus, and the Hindu gurus would make things appear in the sky through, this kind of mantric expertise that you're talking about. And then the Buddhist masters would put on their display in the sky, and which was greater. And whoever won, this wasn't, there were actually more academic debates too, but these were more displays of mastery over illusion. Whoever won, the disciples of the other side would have to convert. You've probably heard these stories before. And now, I guess I've also heard you can actually play. There's a kind of playfulness with emptiness. You can decide to be in the one mood one day and one mood the next day, and you're actually shifting around your designations of what things are in some sense. And why don't we see this kind of thing? Or why isn't this even part of the training to show mastery over of illusion? Like we never hear of things these days of masters producing things in the sky. It seems it's either a lie or a myth. or they lost the knowledge. They don't know how to do it anymore. We become dumber. That would be my interpretation. That we become dumber. This doesn't seem to be done anymore. And also, it would seem part of the training, even from the person. Okay, that's the magical play with illusion. Wisdom play is sometimes a term used in Buddhist language, wisdom play, or the play of illusion. But from the Prasangika viewpoint, you would think like part of the training curricula is to kind of arbitrarily shift designations to show you're not fixated on things as solid, and actually train this way. So why don't we see these things, and why don't we see this as kind of part of a Buddhist curricula? Have those things been lost? Are they not done? I mean, are they just bullshit stories, which I don't think they're just stories myself. Maybe I'm just superstitious. So this is what I want you to comment.
I think you're not superstitious. You're middle-stitious. Some are low-stitious.
I don't know if I'm middle superstitious or higher, but
actually, this supposed to be like all these rituals and in the Tantrayana, sadhanas. These actually it is the kind of this whole sadhana, the deities practice, supposed to be done with this the illusion-like phenomena. Supposed to play with illusion-like phenomena, but when there's the empowerments introducing the deities, masters, the students, are both seeing them as objectivity. So the ritual is not done with what's supposed to be done. So master, the disciples, first they have introduced this kind of, the conventional realities. Things do not exist intrinsically. Then they introduce the deities practice. This just to play. It's just creating the fantasy at the same time knowing these are not reality, not real. So more you create the fantasy, more you understand things are existing like a lie. So that kind of helps you to enhance your wisdom. Supposed to be done like that, but yeah. So people who go and receive empowerment have no idea of emptiness, and the master who is giving empowerment and no emptiness, no. Just as all blessings. So you will go to next life with something like liberation. Maybe after 16 life you may go, or 4 life you may go. So do you want the certificate? I will give you. So kind of like, yeah. So this.
So has the knowledge been lost, or are we just
It's not
untrainable?
lost. It's not lost. It's not lost.
It is lost?
Not lost. It's here.
It is not lost.
It's here. So it's not lost. It's not lost. No, so some misuse or mislead, misguide, or some follow out of faith. So it's not because they lost it. So yeah, some people use the what's that? They want the best mobile phone. Some go after Nokia, some Samsung, some others products, super small products. So they aim for the iPhone. But temporarily, this is so far I can buy it. So that's what they do. Like, what they can grab, they just kind of thinks this is the way. So Buddha Dharma. So I think that's why I'm saying religion is more likely to be, created by the followers. So when the follower projects something and what they have heard, what they understood, and then that's how it becomes the religions. It's not the essence that really stated within the teaching of the Buddha. So the teaching of the Buddha, we interpret that. So if I have not much time to study the deep into, then I will just make something out of it. So that's how Buddha Shakyamuni says. This is how Buddha Shakyamuni told us to do. Yeah.
I can't remember the name of unfortunately, the master. I'm always very attracted to this master. They called him the Ugly One. He was one of the great, I think it was 5 Sakya masters. And he was said that there's some very interesting stories about him. Like, he was very famous within his monastery as a great master, but he felt like a complete fraud. And he took his mala and he threw it into the toilet or something. Just, he was very frustrated. He was in his 60s. And I think it was Tara appeared to him spontaneously. And she says, what's the problem? And, go clean up your mala. I'll teach you. And with each day, he accomplished another booming. And then his behavior became very scandalous. He invited women into the monastery, and people said, oh, he's carousing with women. They keep him out of the monastery. And this same master is said to have reversed the flow of the water. Are these just stories, or are these actually authentic signs of accomplishment? Because they actually seem to say this very seriously in these accounts.
Yeah. Stories are always just made up. So, but there is message. So, stories are told for the, immature or not complete knowledge for them to guide. Stories is always told like that. But each story has the meaning that you can understand after having listening that story many times. After that, that means this, right? Within the story, there is no meaning. So story is trying to say something to you, right? If they directly says things to you and you won't understand. So I have to come up with some idea. That's how the story is told. So when I was small, so the way that my brothers, the sisters, mothers, so the way they discipline me is always trick. There is not much logic, but temporarily what they do is what they can guide me, what they can help me to go on the proper way. So the stories are like that. So this is only I can understand. The trick is the only thing that I can understand. Yeah, it's like, in the Veds, there are a lot of stories, all are stories, but kind of deep in their meanings. That's one thing. So the rest just kind of, has to be peeled out. So you have to find the final, right? So like peeling off the banana, you can eat. peeling of the onions, there's nothing left. So keep peeling. So yeah, only Chanju Simjo Rinpoche, Mayevana Geji, Gevanya, Mevanya, Kondo, Pevers, Tonya Tawa Rinpoche, Mayevana Geji, Gevanya, Mevanya, Kondo, Pevers, Hamasim Gentan, Dada Dingy, and Rosin Gentan, Chanju Simba, Kondo Sushi, Tada Bunjo, Momon Juju, Carrera Revolution, Canada, Woman, Nuju, Jerez, and Kinzin Jaffe, Shabesi Devado,
May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forever. May the precious mind realize the emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May the
Grace forever. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Association beings have all that happiness, and may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished in the sacred land surrounded by the snow mountains. You are the source of all benefit and happiness. How powerful Intrinsic and capsule remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much.